In this video, we're going to be taking a look at 6 different decks that you can play for the Monster Type Festival coming up in just a couple days, starting on July 18th, 2023. We're going to look at a couple of options ranging from decks that you probably already have from past formats to budget options if you're looking to create something for this event. I've already covered the loner decks and Labyrinth kind of a little bit in depth. I'll link that video in the description, but let's go ahead and check out what decks are viable for this event. To start things off, I want to look at Plunder Patrol. This deck has none of its core engine hit, and you can always check to see what is actually limited, forbidden, or semi-limited by going to your filter, establishing the limited list, and then entering the name of the cards that you want to take a look at. So you can see here we're on the event filter. Plunder with this limitation has no cards forbidden, limited, or semi-limited. If you take these off and click on unlimited, all of the cards for this event are at full power. Now this deck isn't cheap, so unless you already have these cards, I don't think you will build this. But the core monster part of the engine, and the main deck at least, is fairly straightforward. The ultra rares do come in the field spell, and in the extra deck you spend a couple of super rares. This is one of the newer cards that came out in Yord. And then of course the Link monster, which you need 3 of, is also ultra rare. So for me personally, I won't be playing this. I'm not a big fan of Plunder Patrol, but I know there are a lot of people who are, and it will be a very viable deck. It is a deck that can put up a lot of dynamic disruption, doing things during your opponent's turn, obviously setting up pretty strong boards. It has the potential to OTK, it has the potential to break boards, so it is an all-around good deck for this event, especially since the event is slower with no traps, hand traps and things like that to kind of really interrupt you. There will be a couple of themes throughout this video though. I will be kind of automatically including some of the staple cards in my opinion. I think back row decks will probably be more prevalent, so things like Duster, Lightning Storm, if you have them, which you should, will probably be in every deck. You know, as you play the format, we'll see if that is relevant later on, as well as non-targeting negates, so Forbidden Droplet might be pretty good, and then of course board breakers with no way to really interrupt your opponent building boards, like no Ash, no Maxi to stop them, etc. You're going to need ways to break it. So things like Dark Hole, Raigeki, Evenly Matched, and things like that going second can be very beneficial. Imperm is basically the only universal hand trap, but I think everybody should have 3 at this point and put them in the deck. Red reboots are also kind of a necessity just because of Labyrinth and other trap decks basically coming up in the format, but you can make the decision if you want to play that or not. Anyways, going to the actual deck here, you can basically play full 3 of every Plunder Patrol card to maximize your chances of opening a good solid engine. So 3 Whitebeard, 3 Redbeard, 3 Bluebeard, and 3 Golden Hair, and then 3 Black Eyes. You can play Kaijus as well if you want ways to just like out big boss monsters on the opponent's side of the field right away, or clear disruptions that they might have, like DDD, Darklords come to mind, and monsters that you might want to clear off the field because they can cause disruptions when you go second. And if you can't tell from my channel, I play a lot of going second cards because I'm very used to losing coin tosses. So I like running a lot of going second cards. And that's why, again, you see the Lightning Storms, the Dusters, and even the Triple Tactics Talon. But if you actually break this deck down, I mean, even Kurikara is a going second card. If your opponent activates monster effects, you tribute their cards off. So this card can be very good for the event as well. Since it's fairy, it's one of the only hand traps available, but it is only during your turn. So keep that in mind. Give this card a read. It is very powerful. It's used a lot in the TCG. Anyways, if you break this deck down, aside from kind of all of the ultra rare, like, you know, paid cards, let's say, you're basically looking at, in terms of like a core engine, I mean, I want people to watch this video, but I don't want people to like watch this video because I don't want everybody to be running evenly matched, but it is what it is. I think you definitely should be running these. Same with the Pot of Prosperity. Pretty staple in this event, I would say. Monster Reborn is free from solo mode, so I'm just going to include these because I think that every deck is basically playing it. So in the core deck, like I said, you got the field spell. The extra deck, you've got basically 2 of every Plunder Patrol monster, 2 Liss, 2 Brawn, 1 or 2 Yord. Again, this is an ultra rare, so depending on if you want to play 2 or not, since all the Plunder Patrol monsters are 4, Baguska obviously very good, same with Dugaris, and then the Mork, I don't know how to say it, but hopefully that's right, and then 3 Blackbeard, which is another ultra rare. So, you know, it is what it is. The nice thing too about it, all the Nightmare monsters are legal for this event, so you can also supplement Nightmare cards in there if you don't want to spend money on, or spend dust or crafting points on some of the other cards that are engine specific. So these are universal cards, which make them very strong. So you can always slot these in since they're all fiends. And then of course you can continue to run Appaloosa and Underworld Goddess, and the Unchained Abomination. These are ultra rares, but again, they're kind of generic monsters. You probably have an Appaloosa, and you probably have an Underworld Goddess. I wouldn't bother making an Unchained if you don't have it, but that is basically Plunder Patrol. It will be a good deck for the event, but again, I'm not a big fan of it, so I definitely will not be playing it. Moving along to the next deck in the event, and what I would say is probably the most budget-friendly option, even though it might not look like it right now, and that is Counter Fairies. I have no idea how this deck will actually perform, but it is legal for the event, and in past events where, you know, the format is slower, obviously, you know, traps excel in those slower formats. So if you didn't want to play Labyrinth, you didn't want to invest in the Labyrinth cards, you didn't want to use the Loner deck, or you got tired of the Loner deck, this is a good viable option. So this deck kind of centers around Bountiful Artemis. Anytime a counter trap is activated, you get card advantage in drawing a card, and you set up the Guiding Ariadne. I don't know how to say it, but let's just say that's the way. As a pendulum effect, you apply both of the effects. You don't play life points to activate your counter traps, and you don't discard to activate counter traps. That instantly means you should be thinking right away, oh, the Solemn cards. Right, so you don't have to pay life points for the Solemn cards. So your strikes and your judgments, if you want to play warnings as well, you could do that. You don't pay. For this card, the Rebirth of Parshath counter trap, okay, you just reveal a counter trap, discard a card, and pay 1,000 life points. You don't do any of that, right? You just straight up negate and then bring out a Parshath monster from your deck or extra deck. And this card here, a super rare, it's really powerful. So you can summon it inherently with its own ability, banishing 2 other fairy monsters from hand or field when a counter trap is activated. To negate an activation of a spell, trap, or monster effect. But then when it hits the field, it has some pretty powerful effects. So if this card attacks the defense position monster, you inflict piercing battle damage, and when this card inflicts damage to your opponent, you add 1 counter trap basically from your deck to your hand. So the downside of this is at 2800 it doesn't beat over Lady Labyrinth, but it can do a lot of damage, and you know, having this set up on the field can just net you even more card advantage. You also play Condemned Witch at 3, so when you summon this card, you can easily grab Forbidden Droplet, Forbidden Lance, or Forbidden Chalice. So these are kind of one of utility cards to help you play around the opponent's cards. You can opt for more Forbidden Lance, for example. So if you're worried about like Labyrinth hitting your cards, you just chain Forbidden Lance, and it's unaffected by other spells and traps your monster that is trying to target. So say they try to like compulse your Bountiful Artemis or something, and you don't want it to go back to your hand, you chain Forbidden Lance. You don't really care about attacking with this so much, you care more about getting the effects off. To board break in this deck, you don't really have too many options. You know, you can play Lightning Storms to clear out back row. You don't care about your extra deck, so you can definitely play 2 or 3 Extravagance, some dualities as well, since you don't really special summon all that Monster Reborn just in there to steal opponent's monsters too if you need. But your main way of like lowering monsters' attacks is like Forbidden Droplet. So you might want to max out on 3 of this, which is ultra rare, but it is kind of a staple card, air quotes. So you could do that. 3 Evenly Matched, again, just should be a staple in every deck in this format, I think. And then 3 Solemn Judgment, again, a very good hand trap, but you might not have 3, and that I wouldn't really say crafting it for this event is all that useful, so this might be a pass for you. And 3 Solemn Strike to negate monster effects. So Solemn Strike is your main way to deal with like Lady and other like big boss monsters, because when they activate the effect, you negate it and you destroy it. Obviously, it wouldn't destroy if the card has protection from destruction like Lady does, but if they don't have set cards, let's say you clear out their back row with a Lightning Storm or a Duster, which, yeah, Duster's in this deck already, you activate Strike when they try to chain Lady effect for something, and you can destroy it that way. As well, 3 Dark Bribes, again, just a counter trap that nets you advantage. You negate their critical trap. Let's say they activate Welcome Labyrinth or something. You straight up negate it. They draw a card, but you negated the power spell of the deck. And then Divine Wrath is an interesting card. I remember when this card came out when I played back in the day. When a monster effect is activated, discard a card, which again you won't do under the Pendulum monster. And if you do, destroy the monster. Negate the activation of the monster and destroy it, right? So pretty powerful stuff. Again, because of the destruction effects, you may not want to play this deck if Lady Labyrinth is really that prevalent, and it can't be destroyed. But you might have to look at other options of outing it, for example, because it is such a big boss monster. Like your main boss monster in the Sacred Arch Arknight or Sacred Arch Air Knight Parshath can't beat over it. So you might have to look at some other options. But this is a viable deck. It can, if you go first especially, you can just stop them from ever setting up the Labyrinth cards if you draw enough of the counter traps, right? So it can definitely do work as well. You can technically go into your extra deck, but probably not too often, like I mentioned. So it's usually just there as fodder for the extravagance, and you should, yeah, and the prosperity here. So that's the counter fairies deck. That is sort of a budget option if you already have the solemn cards. If you don't have the solemn cards, then it's probably a pass. So the next deck we can take a look at here is Darklord Despia. So these are like dark fairies. So we're slowly making our way across all the archetypes: light fairies, dark fiends, maybe light fiends. No, I don't think there's any light fiends. Anyways, in this deck, you're basically combining the cards that pretty much everybody knows in Despia, which is normally used with branded, but you're actually going back to the old school and combining them with Darklord cards. So this deck does synergize fairly well because the fusion monsters for the Despia cards can all use the Darklord cards more or less, and the Darklord engine also synergizes well for the first Darklord, which is an ultra rare, but 3 dark fairy monsters, and all of the Despia cards are dark fairies as well. So this is very beneficial, and you can get a lot of advantage off of the ad libitum. Obviously, if you play branded Despia or have seen the deck around, which I'm pretty sure everybody has, you know how powerful the ad libitum with the branded in red can be. So kind of weird not seeing it with the Albaz, which is obviously not legal for this event since it's a dragon, but this deck is very powerful. So in this version, we got 3 Despian Tragedy, 1 Darklord Ukobak. I'm opting to run the Edgem chain engine with the Fright for Patchwork and the polymerizations, but your main way of fusing will likely be the branded in reds with the Theater of the Branded. Anyways, going on, we got the 1 Indulged Darklord, the 3 Darklord Amdusk, I don't know how to say all these names, 1 Darklord Superbia, 1 Dramaturge, 1 Ad Libitum, 3 Darklord Ichil, I don't know how to say it again. Not used to these names. 2 polymerizations, 1 Monster Reborn, 1 Foolish Burial, which obviously can dump Tragedy or Darklord cards. Same with the Gold Sar, can banish the Tragedy. 3 Allure of Darkness, so again, you got a lot of draw power in this deck. 3 Banishment of the Darklords. This is like Monster Reborn, I think. Add 1 Darklord card from your deck to your hand. Oh, sorry, this is the Searcher. This one is the Monster Reborn. Darklord Contact. Special summon 1 Darklord monster from your graveyard in defense position. So again, just giving you monsters on field, and obviously these are big bodies, and obviously they can be used for like fusion materials as well. In addition to that, you have, again, you can play more Theater of the Branded here. This card just gets you like every, fusions every turn basically. So if you're afraid of this getting outed, you can opt to play more. Actually, I can't believe I'm missing it. Wow, that's really bad on me. Yeah, you definitely want 2 Aliber in this deck as well. So yeah, just keep that in mind. And yeah, now you're at 44 cards, so you definitely want to cut some stuff. So Super Poly, again, here or there, because these Despia cards all take like lighter dark monsters, which this event, Fairy and Fiends are basically all lighter darks anyways. This card can have a lot of utility in this deck because, if you have a Despia card on board, your Super Poly is likely live, fusing away your Despia card and the opponent's light and or dark monster. So this is an easy way to out opponent's boss monsters if you want to play the Super Poly, as well as netting you very powerful fusion monsters from your extra deck as well. So yeah, this is a really good option. The branded opening, obviously, to get the Aliburs, which searches for the branded in reds here, not branded fusion as it normally would, or the Theater of the Branded. So this is obviously a good extender. 2 branded in red, 1 Darklord Rebellion and 1 branded Banishment as well are some options. Again, you can make your decision on what you want to cut. Like you can cut the Fright for engine if you wanted. You can cut back on like just random cards here like Monster Reborn, Gold Sark, since it really only targets for the Tragedy and it's an ultra rare, so it just cheapens the deck a little bit. So you can play around with it. The extra deck though is where you'll see your investment in the 2 Despian Quoritis, maybe even 3, but 2 should be good. 3 Masquerades, again, you can get away with less, but this is, you set up 3 of these, unless your opponent has a way to really out them right away, like, it's going to be rough. 2 Proskinian, these are just rares. Again, very beneficial with Super Poly. You have that 1 Despia monster on field, you fuse away 2 of your opponent's monsters, maybe if they have light and darks on field. 2, the first Darklord, and then you can just supplement Nightmare cards like I said earlier, and any other staple Link monsters that you have that are Fiend or Fairy. So pretty straightforward deck. Will be powerful for the event, especially if you get this on field, because yeah, this card I think makes it so yeah, your opponent cannot target fairy monsters you control with card effects, which is insane. You put this up on field against Labyrinth, I'm pretty sure all of their trap cards target, right? So that's a way to really play around Labyrinth pretty effectively. And it is 4,000 attack, so Lady's not gonna be beating over this card anytime soon. So keep that in mind. Aside from that, you could also play the Morningstar, because if this card is fusion summoned using the Darklord Morningstar as material, you can just destroy all cards your opponent controls. So could you imagine first action, you go second, Labyrinth sets 5, pass or whatever, you start off fusing away or just fusing into the first Darklord, using Morningstar, and you just blow up their whole field, and when this card hits the field, none of their trap cards can target your Darklord to stop it. They can't imperm it, they can't compulse it, they can't do anything, right? So it can literally be a blowout card, and an evenly matched all in one. Essentially, it doesn't vanish, but it will destroy everything, and basically your opponent can't really do anything about it. So yeah, this deck will likely be played to some degree because I know people are a fan of it. But it is a decent option for the event. It is a little expensive, obviously, so unless you already have branded stuff made, I doubt most people will make the extra investment to do the Darklord stuff. But yeah, the core of the deck isn't that expensive. It does come into the extra deck as usual with these events, where you'll be spending your crafting points. Another fan favorite deck is going to be DDD. Now, a lot of people have this from past formats, or they actually still try to play it in regular ranked mode, but this deck will definitely be one of the top contenders. 1 DD Necro Slime, 1 DD Lamia, I don't know if I'm saying these names correctly again, but let's just roll with it. 3 Swirl Slime. I'm opting to play 1 Night Owl, but again, most people don't play that, so you can cut that if you want. Same with the Kaijus, you don't have to play these, but again, going up against like that Darklord deck, they put up the first Darklord, you want to be able to just like out it right away. So playing these can be helpful. You can also play Small World to use this as a bridge, which is beneficial. 1 Vice Typhoon, 1 Savant Kepler, 1 Cerberus, 3 Copernicus. You can opt to play Orthos if you want or not, but we're opting for 2 here. 3 Griffin, so again, DDD is a deck that's basically unhit in this event. Only thing is Gongus is limited to 1. 1 Dog, 1 Oblivion King Abyss Ragnarok, 1 Savant Thomas, 1 Vice King Requiem, 1 Go Divine King Zero, Divine Zero King Rage, and then again just the regular board breakers, Duster, Lightning Storm, a 1-for-1 because again you have some utility in bringing out the level 1s, 1 Dark Contract with Patent License, and then 3 Dark Contract with the Gate, 1 of the Dark Contract with the Swamp King, and then again board breakers evenly matched, 1 Headhunt because you can steal an opponent's monster, I believe, with this. Take a 1 face-up monster your opponent controls, take control of it until the end phase. So, again, I'm always thinking about Labyrinth, right? Lady, untargetable, but you can steal like Lovely with this. And then Red Reboot, again, making its way into this deck. And then this, Dark Contract with Heirs. So once per turn, if you control a DD monster, you can negate all trap effects on the field. So this card can be very beneficial as well. The extra deck is where, again, the majority of the investment will come in. So the core of the deck is pretty cheap. But this is where I think you'll decide if you do want to play this. And this deck is pretty complicated, I think, to play. So unless you have experience with it, I doubt you'd want to make it. But you can definitely try because it will be a top contender. 1 Flame King Gongus, 1 Oracle King Dark, 1 Dragon Bane King Beowulf, which destroys all spells and traps in the you can destroy all cards in the spell and trap zones once during your standby phase. So bringing this out, could you imagine going first, bringing this out, and then pass your opponent? Your opponent is playing Labyrinth, and they're like, I can't really set anything if I can't out this card because it's going to blow everything up during the next turn. Like, pretty interesting stuff, right? 1 Oblivion King Caesar Ragnarok, and then 1 Super Doom King Purple Armageddon, 1 Curse King Siegfried, which is like the face up, you can just like quick effect negate spell or trap on the field. So this card I'm pretty sure can stop evenly match if you go first and set up a board and they try to evenly right away. You just negate it, I think, and it works. Haven't actually tested it, but I'm pretty sure that's how it works. 1 Wave King Caesar, and then 1 Marksman King Tell, and then 1 Wave High King Caesar, 1 Kali Yuga, 2 Divisor King Deus Machinex, and then 3 Abyss King Gilgamesh. So DDD, again, I don't have a lot of experience with this deck, but I've played against it. It is full power, more or less, and so it will be a good option to combat this meta for the event. So switching over from Fiends to Fairies now, I was surprised to see that I still had all these cards from when I was trying to build tier limits on this account. So This might be a viable option for me here, but I've already built Labyrinth, so probably going to use that. Anyways, Vernusylph is also a decent option. It is an Earth Fairy deck. The deck basically functions off of these Vernusylph cards, discarding another Earth and or Vernusylph card, and then getting a special effect off, like drawing a card, doubling a monster's attack, searching for an Earth Fairy, searching for a Vernusylph card, bringing back a monster from the graveyard, etc. And then they all bring back an Earth monster from the graveyard. So it's an easy way to get a very quick Vera on field, which is a very powerful boss monster for the deck. And then you can also play the Ishizu cards, which can help interrupt your opponent, mill important resources that they might need. And then, of course, you can play like your traditional power spells for board breaks and additional resource management. So because you don't really use your extra deck in this deck, you can run the Pot of Extravagances and the Pot of Prosperity and get advantage off that. The field spell also is half decent, and your basic goal with this deck is to flood the field with as many cards, monster cards that is, as possible, because as soon as you have 5 Earth Fairy monsters on board, that's when this deck is really like super powerful. And then aside from that, yeah, just the power spells, power traps, interruptions, and then red reboots to shut down the trap decks like Labyrinth. Pretty straightforward deck. Not too much to it, I would say. So you wouldn't really build this unless you already had these cards from opening the Tier Limits pack and you never dismantled them. But it will be a viable option. It can put out a lot of I don't know if I would say interruption, but just a lot of like damage at once. And you know, if you go second and you're able to break boards, and then you just pop off, like you can just OTK because this deck is so explosive, depending. So it's not really a control focused deck, but it can definitely help you get matches done pretty quickly, I guess. And the final deck we'll take a look at here is probably not a viable option for most of you unless you have the deck built already, and that is going to be Trickstar. So not really a force in the meta in like season 19 of Ranked, and in events I don't think this deck is all that good unless it's an event like this where, you know, if you go first you can set up a lot of like burn centric cards and just make it impossible for your opponent to play, because they're just taking so much damage that by the time they do anything to set up their engine, they basically lose. Now going second with this deck, again, you're trying to play through disruption. It's going to be probably pretty hard to do, so playing things like Forbidden Droplets, Raigekis, Dusters, Lightning Storms, evenly matched is pretty important. And then if you do happen to draw the 1 of Hand Trap in the Imperms, you know, you try to save it for a critical point in the opponent's combo. But this deck is, I would say, is probably more of a going first deck. It would be a little hard to beat. Going second, it can still do work, but it would basically require your opponent to set up a pretty weak board in order for you to set up, since this deck doesn't really put up disruptions. It's just about building a half decent board and going for that burn damage. But the way the modern game is, this deck can be pretty hard. So in my version, again, because most of the hot cards are like not playable, like Maxi, Ash Blossom, you could kind of max out on more Trickstar engine. So 2 Nightshade, 2 Lilybell, 3 Licorice, and 3 Candina. So again, a pretty hefty investment for 3 ultra rares. 3 Narcissus, 1 Rhodode, I don't know how to say it, Rhodode, 3 Korobane, and then again the board breakers, Raigeki, Duster, 3 of the Trickstar Festival, 1 Lightning Storm, 1 Pot of Prosperity, 2 of the Trickstar Light Stage, 2 Dark Room of Nightmare, again you can opt for 3 if you want, 2 Forbidden Droplet, 2 Disturbance Strategy, you can do 3, but this card basically just means that your opponent puts back like 5 cards, let's say, if you draw this in the opening hand and you set it and you activate it on your opponent's turn, or I guess they put back 6 if they draw for turn, and then if Licorice is on board, or multiple Licorice, you're just burning them for every card that they're drawing. Combining that with Dark Room of Nightmare, you can see how that damage can add up quite quickly when they're drawing 6 new cards. And then of course 1 Trickstar Reincarnation, another ultra rare, so you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the main deck. And then again, board breaks, triple evenly matched, your interruption, hand trap, infinite impermanence, and then you can opt to play Ice Dragon Prison if you want, but this is non-targeting removal, right? Target 1 monster in your opponent's graveyard, special summon it to your field. So the monster in the graveyard is targeted, usually not too hard to play around, things aren't untargetable in the graveyard usually, but its effects are negated. Then you can banish 1 monster from both players' fields that have the same type as each other. So I mean, because this event is basically just Fiends and Fairies, right? You can, let's say, bring back a Fairy, and you can banish like one of the opponent's very powerful Fairies, let's say, and you can keep their Fairy and banish one of your own Fairies, and banish their other boss monster, let's say. So this card will have a lot of utility in this event. Extra deck wise, Trickstar Bloom, just 1, 2, Holly Angel. You can play more of this if you want more of the Link ones, but it's not really that useful, I don't believe. 2 Crimson Heart, some of the Nightmare utility cards in Phoenix and Cerberus. 2 Devaridis, and 1 Foxglove Witch. 1 I don't know how to say this, Delphindium, and 1 Unicorn, 1 Bella Madonna, and 1 Appaloosa. So there it is, guys. Those are the decks for the event. Again, Labyrinth was already covered in another video, which is linked in the description. If you like this video, a like would be appreciated, and a comment below would help. Let me know what else you are interested in seeing and what deck you're going to be playing for this event. Thank you for watching. Quantum is out.